The flight was crowded, the hum of the engines blending with the low chatter of passengers. Among them sat Jacob, a single dad in his mid-30s, trying to calm his restless 6-year-old daughter Lily. She was wiggling in her seat, pulling at his sleeve, and squealing whenever anyone glanced their way. Jacob smiled, a little wary, and handed her a coloring book, hoping to keep her busy for the long flight ahead. Across the aisle, a man in an impeccably tailored suit leaned back in his seat, scrolling on his phone. He noticed Jacob struggling with the small backpack, the snacks, and Lily's endless questions. A smirk crossed his face. Some people shouldn't be allowed to fly. The man muttered loud enough for a few nearby passengers to hear. Look at him. Can't even handle a kid for a minute. Pathetic. Jacob ignored him, focusing instead on Lily, who had now discovered the plane's tiny window shades and was giggling as she made shadows on the wall. Minutes passed, and the suited man continued his low-level mocking, whispering rude comments, nudging his neighbor with a grin. Jacob felt the sting of embarrassment but refused to engage. He knew confrontation wouldn't help. He simply tightened his hold on Lily's hand and smiled, speaking softly to her about the clouds outside. Then the plane shuddered. A deep, alarming jolt rocked the cabin. The seatbelt signs flashed, and the captain's voice cut through the cabin speakers, tense and urgent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. We need to know if there is a trained pilot on board. Anyone with flight experience, please identify yourself immediately. A wave of murmurs ran through the cabin. Panic flickered across faces. The suited man froze, his earlier arrogance evaporating instantly. Jacob, on the other hand, felt his heart tighten, but something clicked in his mind. He had flown combat simulators in his younger days. Not exactly a licensed commercial pilot, but he knew planes' mechanics and emergency procedures. He hesitated, weighing the chaos around him. Lily looked at him with wide, trusting eyes. I can help," Jacob said, his voice steady. Immediately, a flight attendant rushed over, relief washing over her face. She explained the issue: a sudden malfunction in the navigation system, combined with turbulence in a storm zone. They needed someone with precise instincts to assist until the captain could regain control. The suited man looked at Jacob incredulously. "You," he whispered, disbelief etched in every wrinkle of his perfect suit. Jacob ignored him, moving toward the cockpit with Lily's hand in his. The captain's eyes were sharp, scanning Jacob as he explained what was happening. Calmly, methodically, he followed instructions, helping to stabilize the plane. Sweat dripped from his brow, but his mind was clear, focused on the task at hand. Back in the cabin, passengers were holding their breaths. Lily stayed close, her small hand clutched tightly in Jacob's. The suited man now seemed tiny, his previous confidence entirely gone. He had mocked a man he assumed was incapable of even keeping a child calm, and here Jacob was saving all of them. Minutes felt like hours. Then, slowly, the plane steadied. The turbulence eased. The warning lights dimmed, and the captain finally exhaled. "Thanks to you, sir, we've got it under control," the captain said, his voice a mix of relief and admiration. Jacob nodded, brushing the sweat from his forehead, and looked back toward the cabin. The suited man's face was red, a mix of embarrassment and awe. Other passengers began to clap quietly, then louder, some even standing. They weren't clapping just for the plane being safe. They were clapping for the courage, for the calm, for the father who had quietly done everything right while being mocked for it. Lily hugged him tightly, whispering, "You're my hero, Daddy." The suited man leaned toward Jacob, finally breaking the silence. I'm sorry, I didn't." Jacob smiled, squeezing Lily's hand. "It's okay," he said simply. No anger, no lectures. Just a quiet strength that seemed to ripple through the cabin. The rest of the flight passed without incident, but the atmosphere had changed completely. People who had glanced at Jacob with judgment now looked at him with respect, some even approaching him with heartfelt thanks. Lily's laughter returned, light and unburdened, as if the tension had never existed. By the time the plane touched down safely, Jacob's quiet heroism had left a mark not just on the passengers, but on the suited man, on everyone who had witnessed it. Sometimes, the loudest voices aren't the ones that matter. Sometimes, it's the steady, patient, compassionate ones that change everything. And as they walked down the aisle, Lily skipping beside him, Jacob felt a small, quiet pride. Not in the recognition, not in the applause, but in the fact that he had been exactly who he needed to be when it mattered most.